This episode is brought to you by Meow Wolf. Memories await at Meow Wolf Denver. Have a new cosmic experience as often as you want for a whole year with the annual Portal Pass. Practically perpetual access to Convergence Station, plus special discounts and perks with a Z every month. Get your Portal Pass for 30% off now through June 20th. Already planning a visit? Upgrade your regular ticket to a Portal Pass for just $19 on site. For more information, visit meowwolf.com. That's meowwolf.com. Today on CityCast Denver, many Denverites are worried about crime and they want to know what the city is doing about it. Enter the District Attorney's Office, which handles the prosecution of cases involving police misconduct, drug crimes, and more. Denver is electing a new district attorney this year who will lead the city in these endeavors. So this week, I'm sitting down with each candidate. You'll hear from one today and one tomorrow about how they want to keep the city safe. Today is Wednesday, June 12th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. John Walsh, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Well, thanks so much, Bree. It's really fun and an honor to be here.
So why do you want to be DA?
Well, Denver's my hometown. I moved to the metro area when I was 12. I love this city, raised a family here over in Park Hill. All three of our kids, DPS grads. And so in the last few years, really the pandemic and since, seeing the city struggle a bit with some basic questions of community safety has been hard. And so when Beth McCann, the current DA, announced she wasn't going to run again, I thought, okay, this is a place I can give back to the place that I love so much and think I can make a real difference.
Why do you think you'd be a good DA?
Well, my background is I spent about half of my career as a prosecutor, federal side, both as a regular, line assistant U.S. attorney, as supervisor. And then I was the U.S. attorney for the state of Colorado, so the top federal prosecutor during the presidency of Barack Obama. And, as what that means is I've spent really a lot of time thinking about how to be effective in prosecution, and also how to be a community problem solver, because that's really, in the end, part of what a DA has got to do, just like it was part of what a U.S. attorney had to do. That combined with the fact that, the other half of my career I've spent is in private law firms, but really engaged in the community here. Whether it's in early childhood education, I helped found a group called Invest in Kids 25 years ago, or in the Spanish-speaking community because I speak Spanish fluently from exchange student time in middle school. It's that combination of really being a part of this community and having worked in it, and that experience as a prosecutor that really makes me think that I can contribute in a kind of unique way.
So a lot of folks say that Denver is unsafe, but a lot of folks don't. What do you think about that part of this conversation about our city?
Well, I think it's important not to exaggerate the challenges that we're facing. At the same time, unfortunately, I think we have struggled a bit with some core issues here. I'll give you a couple examples. If you look nationally, violent crime has come down quite a bit in the last 18 months, 2 years, which is great news. And it's come down a bit in Denver, but not as much as nationally. And we have, unfortunately, a rising youth violence issue that has to be addressed. Now, that may not affect everyone equally, but it's really a concern because we don't want to have our young people get caught up in that kind of violence. We've had a couple shootings at East High School in the last year or so, and that's not the only place, but just as an example. And the other thing is I think we've got two other issues that I hear from people about constantly. And one is I think we're all concerned about the fentanyl epidemic. Last year, 2023, all-time high drug overdose deaths in the city and county of Denver. It was over 550. That's a public health crisis as well as a public safety crisis. We need to address that. And finally, I think we all know, unfortunately, that we had in 2022 the not very great distinction of winning the car theft capital of the country.
Right.
Now that's gotten better.
I was going to say there have been some
it's-
serious measures to curb that, and at least it's gone down quite a bit.
It has,
But-
and it's still high.
Sure.
It's still high. That's one where I think if we focus on each of these different things, I think we can make even further progress. But I agree with you. It's important for us not to exaggerate what the issues are. Part of it, I think, people's concerns have been driven by sort of the visible difficulties we've had, unfortunately, with our unhoused population and the way that downtown has suffered a bit in these last few years. Now, not all of that, obviously, is something the DA can handle, right? It's a much broader issue, and our mayor has been working on it. But I think it's that combination of things that leaves people a little uneasy. Having said that, I have really enormous confidence that this is a city that can overcome these challenges, and we need to approach it in a proactive, energetic way to get there.
What do you see the DA's role is in something like the unhoused crisis? Because I don't want to align the unhoused crisis with the crime issue because those things can intersect.
Yes.
But I think there's sometimes a conflation of seeing unhoused people in a state and that equating to a crime.
Right.
But I guess outside of that, what does the DA do here? What is your role?
Well, a component of the issue we're facing with unhoused people is those folks who are suffering from substance use disorder and those folks who have mental health issues, right? And that's a group of people that unfortunately get involved in the criminal justice system more often, a variety of ways that can happen. It's not always drug crimes. It could be theft or, destruction of property or even assaults. I think it is so important for the district attorney to be approaching those issues. First, yes, firmly enforcing the law where there's a risk to public safety, to community safety, but at the same time recognizing it's a public health issue. And so when you have someone whose misconduct, whose criminal behavior is driven by these other problems that they're suffering with, that we use the criminal justice system as a way to, of course, protect the community and at the same time get those folks the kind of treatment and the help they need. So that means expanding things like the drug court that we've got here in Denver. And then there's also a sort of new mental health court here called the Reach Court, which I think can really play a constructive role if we look to expand it as well. So there is definitely a role for the DA. DA's never going to be administering mental health programs, treatment programs, or substance use disorder programs. But the DA, in the way the DA enforces the law to protect the community, can help on those issues.
Could you explain a little bit about an expansion of something like drug court or this mental health court? Because I have to say I don't know enough about it to understand how that would impact the issue that we see at play every day, which is folks in crisis who are maybe dealing with substance use issues.
Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting history of the drug court, for example, here in Denver. 10 years or so ago, it was a bigger court. And then it got, disbanded briefly, and it's come back in recent years. It's a time-intensive use of a judge's time and probation office time and DA's time and public defender's time. But the strategy really is to look to each of the folks who are the people who've been accused of crime and give them essentially options to avoid incarceration that include treatment and other, sorts of probation or supervision, with the idea that will help move them to a place where they're not, suffering from that addiction or have gotten help on mental health side and won't be in danger of reoffending. To give you the flip side of that, You've got someone who has broken the law and has a substance use disorder. They get a short prison sentence or a short jail sentence. They don't get any help for the underlying issue. They come out 60, 90 or 6 months days or 6 months later. And, unsurprisingly, they're going to get back into the same sort of issues. We can't just jail our way out of this problem.
So that I guess that's another question I have for you as someone who's worked as a prosecutor is we are seeing, at least legislatively, some pushes to continue to further criminalize folks involved in the drug situation that we have in this country. And I wonder how you view that, or what do you see as your approach to handling, for instance, the fentanyl crisis and the incarceration issues?
Sure. Well, look, let's start one place where it does make sense for law enforcement and the DA's office to be involved, and that is targeting the folks who are often cartel related, who are actually the dealers who are bringing the drugs into the city, right? So large quantities of fentanyl or other drugs. That's a place where really targeted enforcement is important. Not because we're going to be able to completely cut off the flow of drugs. I mean, I think we all know that hasn't worked, but to make it more difficult and to reduce the total amount of drugs on the street. That flows through actually to, I've talked to people in the community in Curtis Park and other places where they've said, look, there are 4 guys who show up all the time and they are selling drugs. Can you get those folks off the street? And so that's an appropriate use of just pure law enforcement resources. I think we have to be thoughtful, though, about how we address the complex set of issues that arise when you've got someone who's addicted. The reality is that someone who's living on the streets, addicted or with a serious mental health issue, is causing damage more broadly to the community as well as to themselves, right? In other words, it can really undermine a neighborhood or things of that sort. And so I think we need to approach that issue both with an eye towards helping those people get off the streets and getting them the help they need, and where we need to enforce the law, even with respect to them. I've talked to a lot of substance use disorder counselors, and what I've heard consistently is that with every case, you've got to bring empathy, but you also have to bring consequences if you really want to affect change in that person's life.
Do you support safe injection sites?
So this is a great question, and I don't support an across-the-board authorization of safe injection sites. I don't think we have the evidence to support the fact that the impact, what the impact would be on the community. And the thing that I worry about is that whether it would end up having the effect of encouraging or enabling drug use or increasing the amount of drug use. Certainly there's some evidence out there I've read that suggests you save lives with a safe injection site, right?
Yeah.
And that's an incredibly important thing to work forward towards. What I would support is for us to do that additional investigation and research to make sure that if we go down that road, that we're not somehow increasing the amount of addiction that's out there. And that's the question I don't think we have sufficient evidence on, and that we need to find out. So, what does that look like? I think we would need to sit down with the folks who actually do that kind of research and figure out how you set that up. There have only been a handful of these sites in the whole country.
Yes, and in the whole world, honestly. But I think a lot of cities are trepidatious about being, what I've heard from other folks in the political sphere is like, we want someone else to do it first. We don't want to be the trendsetters there. But sometimes I wonder, when do we? Then when does it happen?
So I think that's a really important point, and I think it's legitimate to be a little concerned about setting something up that could have negative consequences for the community. And the evidence in my eye, I'm a skeptic that you could avoid that. Having said that, as I said earlier, we had 550 drug overdose deaths in Denver, just the city and county of Denver last year. And so I am open to the notion that we should take a really hard look at that further investigation, whether that's some kind of carefully controlled pilot or some other kind of research. But I'm not in favor of just a bill that says, okay, you're authorized to do this. I just think we don't know enough about the consequences of that.
Winding through the canyon, her anticipation rose. Monarch Casino Resort Spa, the epitome of mountain chic. Her pulse raced as she sat down at a high-limit baccarat table. Hungry, she chose the Southwest fusion flavors of Bistro Mariposa before sending to bliss at top-rated Spa Monarch for a signature massage treatment. She slept well in her luxurious hotel room, fulfilled by her stay. Write your own story at monarchblackhawk.com.
Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
This episode is brought to you by Pine Melon, the farmer's market delivered. Miss the farmer's market this weekend? Don't fret. Pine Melon has got you covered, delivering Colorado's freshest local produce straight to your doorstep. Pine Melon is a next-generation grocery delivery app that partners with over 200 local farmers, ranchers, and producers in Colorado. With a mission to transform Denver's food system, empower local makers, and promote community well-being, they make supporting local both easy and rewarding. Enjoy high-quality meats, eggs, and dairy from small local farms, as well as a wide variety of pantry staples, all delivered straight to you. The best part? Pine Mountain offers same-day delivery to Denver and Boulder within a 2-hour window. No subscription necessary. Support local today and use promo code CityCastDenver for $75 off your first delivery at pinemelon.com. Enjoy the best of the farmers market, even when you can't make it there yourself. Okay, let's move on. What is something that current District Attorney Beth McCann did that you would have done differently?
So I think that's a crucial question. And the reality is that I think we need to bring kind of a refresh to leadership in the DA's office. And that means really energetically approaching things like car theft, like violent crime, like even our approach to community partnership. One of the things I pride myself on from my time as U.S. Attorney is the level of community partnership that we struck up in different communities around the city. Beth has certainly done work in that area, but I think we have a long way to go. And particularly post-pandemic and post-George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, there's a lot of distrust out there in parts of the city that we really need to work to address. In addition to that, I think we have to really confront the fact that there is an absence of resources on some of these key points: substance use disorder treatment, mental health treatment. And I think while the DA is never going to actually administer those programs, the DA needs to be a very strong voice to increase the community-based programs that are out there.
What do you mean when you say community-based? I'm just curious how that translates to the work that the DA does every day versus what's happening in, say, I live in a neighborhood where youth gun violence, for instance, is higher than in other neighborhoods. Yeah. What does the DA have to do, or what does that look like on a daily, like, community face-to-face level basis?
Well, there's great evidence out there, if you look back over time, that for youth violence, for example, and gang violence, that if you bring the combination of firm enforcement against the people who are actually pulling triggers, and you can identify those folks because it's possible to identify the individual guns from the sort of the fingerprint they leave on the spent casings. Identify those people and get them off the street because they're truly a danger to the community. Combine that with youth development programs and working with the schools to really give kids alternatives so they don't get caught up in that culture that in some parts of town can be a real issue, that you can really knock down the violent crime rate, and particularly the youth violence issue. I'll just give you a couple of examples that I think are really crucially important, and that is, the number of times I've spoken to parents and teachers and even some kids who say there are kids in our city who, in their backpack, take a pistol to school, not because they intend to shoot someone, but because they think they need to have it for their own safety, because the environment in whatever school they're in gives them that level of concern. We've already lost the public safety battle when that happens, when you have a 14, 15-year-old with a pistol. Even if their intentions are purely to defend themselves, God only knows what could happen. So when I talk about community-based programs, I mean making sure that we work with the schools, that we have intervention programs there, and that we also have after-school programs and rec center programs. And I think the DA has an important role working with the city and our mayor to make sure that those programs get done. And actually, that deputy DAs get involved in those programs as well. So it's a leadership issue that I think can have just an enormous impact over time on these really important issues.
What's your approach or thoughts on the fact that Denver's police force, like many across the country, are facing deficits? They can't hire folks. Folks don't make it through the basic, the academy. What do you see there as the issue?
Well, I think there are a lot of things going on there, actually. And it's interesting. I think we all know that the city has really been working hard to get more candidates into the police academy, and they've had some success. Just recently, a couple months ago, I did a ride along with the Denver police one night, and the sergeant I was riding with commented that, Yeah, we've had success in getting new folks into the academy. What we're having trouble with now is retention. So even once someone graduates, maybe they're a year, 2 years with DPD, and then they decide, maybe I need to be doing something different. That's a morale issue. That is a sense of, I think, frustration that the police sometimes feel. And I think it's important to try to repair that, but repair that in a really constructive way that is consistent and earns the trust of the community. To my eye, that means the DA's office should be really involved, working with the police department on policies about sort of the cutting edge 21st century community policing, as well as training, and then also making sure that that line officers, when they do great things, because they do, that they get attention for that as well, and not just those instances where things have gone wrong. So it's sort of a leadership role that I think the DA's office and the elected DA can be taking. It's a bigger problem than the DA alone is going to be able to solve, but I think the DA can be part of it. Always keeping in mind, and this is important, that when misconduct happens, it is also the responsibility of the elected DA to have the courage and the neutrality and the independence to make the decisions wherever they may fall based on the law and the facts. And my experience as U.S. Attorney was that if you have a strong working relationship with a law enforcement agency, and then the moment comes when you have to make that tough decision, that it's better for everybody, and that things go much more. They're never going to be smooth, but they're going to be better.
And I know that DA McCann has faced that in her tenure. And I think you're kind of talking about this, like the payouts situation that we have in Denver. And Denver has unfortunately been higher up there not in the last couple of years, but in more recent years, we have had high payouts for police violence and police brutality issues. Yes. And I also am just thinking about this recent struggle that was happening between the hiring of police officers and these concerns that we're lowering the standards to just even get people in the door. And I don't know, as a person that lives in Denver, it makes me a little weary that we're even approaching this in the right way.
Yeah, on that last point on lowering standards, I'm obviously not in support of that. We need to have the highest quality candidates possible, because we're asking a lot of police officers, and we want to be sure we have people who are in the right frame of mind and the right set of skills to be able to do that. I don't understand exactly what went on there. It seems like a complicated situation.
I think it's still developing for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't want to prejudge what actually happened. But I do think it's important that we really look for the best folks to come in to do that. One of the great privileges I had while I was U.S. Attorney during the Obama administration is there was an office called the COPS office, which was Community-Oriented Policing Service. And that office was almost like a technical assistance office that would go around the country and help police departments really develop the best techniques, the best policies, the best training to be community-oriented folks. And I worked very extensively with them. We had a couple of departments in Colorado come to me as U.S. Attorney and say, we would love to invite cops in to help us because we have some community issues. That's the kind of work I think we need to be doing in Denver, not necessarily with Department of Justice, but just on the ground in Denver itself.
So your opponent in this race supports the expansion of programs like the STAR and co-responder programs, sort of interventions that often don't directly involve police. For folks that don't know, a line someone can call instead of 911 when there's maybe someone experiencing a mental health crisis, like in the alley behind your house or something. Yeah. How do you feel about co-responder programs, and would you expand that and put more funding, or push to put more funding towards that?
Well, that's an easy one. Those are programs that have been proven to work and to really help in many, many situations. I've worked on issues of police accountability and response for decades. I was actually the vice chair of the Public Safety Review Commission, which was the civilian oversight board for Denver before the current system, so like 20 years ago, and worked on that extensively. And when I was in private practice, we actually got hired by the city of Rochester, New York, from here. I was here in Denver, to help them because they had some mental health response issues. And one of the things we recommended was the STAR program as a way of avoiding the situation where, even the best police officer responding to a mental health crisis, the mere fact that it's a police officer can sometimes escalate the situation, right?
Sure.
And we don't want to put the police officer or the person involved in that situation if we can avoid it. And so that's something that I strongly believe we should be expanding, and I've helped other cities implement.
So you told Denverite that you'd create a violent crime task force, which would in part prosecute drug dealers, address fentanyl issues that we've talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But what do you think we're not doing right now, or could be doing better? And why would you want to create this task force?
So the task force that I have in mind is a way of ensuring that all the different parts of the Denver DA's office are coordinating and talking with each other. Because without getting into too much detail, the way the office is organized is you have some specialty units. There's an organized crime task unit, for example. But then a lot of the work gets done in individual district courtrooms. And I think it's so important that we are bringing together the best techniques and the best information across all of the office and all of the cases. And at the same time, doing what I said earlier, which is working with the city on ways to prevent crime by youth development programs and things of that sort. And the focus there is really on gun crime and on youth violence. And it's tragic, but we've seen an increase in youth violence.
Yeah. Well, before we go, I just want to ask you one semi-fun question. What is your favorite place to hang out in Denver, whether it's in your neighborhood, the neighborhood you spend the most time in, whether that's a bar, a restaurant, a park? What's your favorite place to just be hanging out in Denver?
I'm going to give you a couple,
okay.
Right? Because there are so many great places in the city. I think about the places I take visitors when they come by. One place that I will just sing the praises of is there's a great Mexican restaurant on Santa Fe, the El Noa Noa, which has an unbelievable patio in the summer.
Why are you speaking my language? This is my favorite patio in one of my favorite Mexican restaurants in Denver.
There we go. It is. I love that patio. They have a little water feature. It's just a great place.
The atmosphere all around. Sights, sounds, smells, tastes.
The whole thing.
It's great.
So maybe I should just stop there. I could give you another 5.
No, I'd love another one maybe that would surprise me.
It's interesting. The other place that the bar on the 22nd floor of the Hyatt Convention Center Hotel is great for visitors because the view is so spectacular. And it's not a dinner place, but if you just want to have a drink with someone,
and show them the thing that people come here for.
Exactly right. And that's a place that I love as well. But I'm an old mountain person.
Okay.
I've spent a lot of time climbing and all the rest. And, this city and nearby, there are so many examples I so appreciate. I'll also just put in a plug for Park Hill because I just love that neighborhood.
Great.
It's my home neighborhood, and there's so many great things about it.
John Walsh, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Yeah, it's totally my pleasure, and I look forward to having a chance to be back on the show. And I just want to leave you with my confidence that we're at a point where we really can sort of turn the corner on some of the difficulties that we've had post-pandemic. I have great confidence, and I'm very excited and energized about this race, and looking forward to helping the city I love so much.
Tune in tomorrow to hear from the other DA candidate, Leora Joseph. Oh, and by the way, who are you voting for and why? Give us a call on the Denver DA Election Mania hotline at 720-500-5418. Again, let us know who you're voting for and why you think they're the best person for the job. That number is 720-500-5418. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell a registered voter about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See ya! And they want to know what the city is doing about it. Eat at the district attorney's office. It's a new restaurant concept downtown. Everything is served on a docket.